Welcome to Outdrive, folks. I'm your host, Cliff Callis, and each week I'm bringing you actionable marketing insights you can apply to reach, connect with, and convert rural American consumers. Outdrive is powered by Callis, a full-service advertising agency with a focus on marketing rural America. Callis offers a wide range of integrated marketing services, including website development, search engine marketing, social media, video, and digital. We develop strategic and creative campaigns to build your brand and your business, and you can learn more about us at ecallis.com. Now join me in the front seat as we head out on the road to success. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome to Outdrive. We've got another great story to share with you today about life and work in rural America. You know, every now and then you hear a story that is so powerful and moving that you have to pass it along. I heard today's guest story a couple of months ago and immediately knew I wanted to have him on our podcast. So I invited him and he accepted, and I know you're going to have some insightful takeaways today from this episode. Rocky Sickmann is Director of Anheuser-Busch Accounts for Folds of Honor, a not-for-profit organization that provides scholarships to the spouses and children of fallen or disabled service members and first responders. Anheuser-Busch is Folds of Honor's longest and most generous partner, and we'll hear Rocky talk about his role with this impressive organization. We'll also hear about his personal experience with the Iranian hostage crisis of 1979, a moving story which became a part of his path to Folds of Honor. Buckle up and get ready to hear his story. Welcome to Outdrive, Rocky.
Thank you for having me there, Cliff.
I'm so excited to have you on this morning. I've been talking to some of the people in our organization about you and your story and Folds of Honor, and they're all excited to hear this. And gosh, we've got so much to talk about this morning. Honestly, you've had some life experiences that are unimaginable, I think. And, you know, you work for a really impressive organization that is doing some great things. I'd like to talk to you about growing up in rural Missouri and your military experience, which I know is of a lot of interest to many of our listeners. How you spend your time today, what the future holds for you, but also for Folds of Honor. So a lot to talk about. Let's start by having you just do a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, obviously, it's interesting you mentioned my story yesterday, November 4th, 46 years ago, was the day that I was taken hostage. But backing up a little bit, I grew up in a small town of Krakow, Missouri, population 50. I always said we had maybe a couple more people than that. But my parents, we had 5 kids in the family, a total of 7 of us in a small 900 square foot home, but very Catholic family. My parents taught me 3 things, plus other things, but love of family, love of faith, and love of my country. And those are 3 things that took me through, and just grew up in that small town, and then went to high school in Washmo, Missouri, and graduated in 1976 and went into the Marine Corps. And I always wanted to serve. My brother was in the Army. My dad was in the Army. And that was one thing, service. The military growing up, my mother's side of the family, my father's side of the family, and just remember raising a flag and just having that patriotic piece that my parents, again, taught me. And I wanted to serve, and I also wanted to see the world, and the world I saw. So I graduated at MCRD in San Diego, went to Asia for a year, went to Europe for a year, came back, and then joined Marine Security Guard duty, which my first post was October 7th, 1981 in Tehran, Iran.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you, sir.
The military teaches so many things. I'm sure there are things that you experienced and learned that have stuck with you all these years. What would be some of those?
Teamwork, commitment, honor, pride. Those were all things that really my parents, and then also all my coaches in high school, taught those things. But it really came to a head in the military. And I mean, you're with all these individuals from all over the world. You know, we accomplished a lot. We did many maneuvers working in various countries, but it was one of those things that they took a young kid and created a man. And also, like I said, I saw the world. And growing up in that small town of Krakow, Missouri, I knew that there was more outside that little town. And so being able to tour the world, was something, an experience that you can read about it, but until you're there, do you really learn a lot about that specific area? So that was very helpful.
What are your memories about growing up in Krakow?
You know what? These are things, Cliff, that when I was held hostage and I was tied to a chair for the first 30 plus days, I had to go to a happy place. And I can tell you, I went back to the times of when it used to snow a lot in that small town. And that morning you would hear KLPW because my mother would have that radio going and you would feel the window. The window had frost on it, and you could hear KLPW say that, no school at Krakow, St. Gertrude School, and which you were very happy. Well, you would then get up, brush your teeth, go in. Your mother made these huge pancakes. She had a black skillet. And these are all things that I'm sitting there. I'm going all the way back to that, to where my mother, I could remember her, she would pour the batter in four quadrants of that pan, and those pancakes would bubble. I mean, I would go so far in depth, and then she would flip them over, and then I would sit down. She put those on a plate, put butter, and we had an old syrup container that you had to pry the syrup container top off with a spoon, and you got a little dip, and then you poured the syrup over top of that. And I ate those pancakes as I sat in that chair. And so we would then go sleigh riding down A Holt's Hill. And they had this big steep hill throughout the woods. And I can remember getting on that sleigh and actually sleigh riding down this area just to pass my time. And then at night, we would then play hockey at Bestie's Pond. We would build a bonfire, and that created heat and light. And then we would clear the snow off of the lake. Now, and shame on this, we didn't test the ice back then. We just knew it was cold, and it was cold for a long period of time. So we knew it was going to be thick. And so we would then play hockey from 11 o'clock to about 1 o'clock in the morning. And if you snapped the stick, you'd have to bring your stick home and had plywood in the basement. And with the jigsaw, I would cut out another piece of plywood and I would wrap it with electrical tape. And that would be my stick because you couldn't afford to go buy sticks at that time. And then in the summertime, we would play Indian ball right there at St. Gertrude's grade school. And if you hit the house down below the field, if you hit it in the fly, that was a home run. And then we would stop playing Indian ball. We would then come up and play basketball. And then we'd play basketball. And then we'd walk up to Krakow store and we'd get a burger and a soda pop. And we'd sit on a ledge and watch cars. And there weren't too many cars that came through Krakow at that time. But I mean, those were the times that just you would start and you would go all the way up into high school and playing state championship in 1973. I was an underclassman, played special teams, and we won that state championship. And so then my senior year, I was a captain along with the two Seaverts. And so just remembering football and baseball, and then, of course, joining the United States Marine Corps. But I would, wonderful, incredible memories of growing up in that small town.
Oh, those are great memories. Well, you referenced the 46th anniversary yesterday and your personal experience with the Iranian hostage crisis. Talk to us about that.
It was one of those things. I get to Iran, like I said, October 7th, 1979, a beautiful country. I mean, the history. And I can remember sitting next to this individual as we were landing in Tehran, and he says, yeah, just turn your clock back 100 years. But the city, an old country, but much history. So I was only there for 27, 28 days. And so I really didn't get a chance to tour the city. It was about work at that point in time. And obviously, 2 weeks prior to November 4th, we find out that the Shah of Iran was being allowed into the United States for medical treatment. Well, obviously, the Islamic Republic of Iran were not happy with that. And so the morning of November 4th, 1979, is there had been demonstrations for those 2 weeks, Cliff, that they were demonstrating. The day before, November 3rd, I remember all the non-essential people were moved to a safe house up in north because we had heard that there was going to be a huge demonstration, which it was. It was 200,000 people surrounding the American embassy. And when they were chanting, I mean, the windows you can see vibrate, shaking. And at that point in time, the host government, they surrounded the American embassy and provided this protection. And that's, if you've ever gone overseas or any of your viewers, you go to an American embassy, you have to get through the host government's security before coming into our security at the embassy. Well, the morning of November 4th, I will tell everybody, and I will go to my grave and I will tell everybody that morning as I'm walking into the motor pool gate, which is about maybe 30 yards away from the front gate. I'm walking in, my walkie-talkie had recall, recall. Again, there was a demonstration out in front. I turned to look at the front gate and they're coming over the wall. And as I looked at the gate, there was no security outside the gate preventing them. So everybody uses this story, Cliff, about that it was a group of radical students. Well, you know what? I call false on that because I really think that they use this radical students, but really it was the Islamic Republic of Iran that basically created this, and they extended it for 444 days. I mean, so the country of Iran was negligent in providing security to the American embassy. So I ran back to the front door of the Chancery that morning of November 4th. Billy Gallegos is closing the 4-inch steel door. He keeps it open long enough for me to squeeze in. I get in, we get back, we get our weapons, which our weapons consisted of a snub-nosed 38 and a sawed-off shotgun to protect an American embassy. And I'm happy to tell you that 7 Marines held that American embassy for 4 hours that morning, waiting on the host government to come to provide protection and to remove everybody. They never came. In the basement of the American embassy, they broke through the basement window. Billy's downstairs. He radios and says they've broken through. I'm closest to the steps. I run downstairs. I get downstairs. He's pointing down the corridor. And sure enough, around the corner come 4 Iranian women in black chadors. And behind them are the Iranian men using them as shields, pushing them forward. We weren't pushing them fast. As they were going slowly forward, Billy and I were slowly going back. Tear gas pops. They removed themselves from the building. We have gas masks on. We go up to the very top of the American embassy. We barricaded ourselves behind the top door of the American embassy, and we're waiting on our next steps because there is no other floor to go to. And at this point in time, the State Department's on the phone with President Carter. He's asking what's the status, and obviously there was none. Security, military was breaking, and they were running with everybody else throughout the compound. It's a 23-acre compound. And so that's when we were told to basically give ourselves up and that they would resolve this in diplomacy. And so the Marines, after we had just barricaded it, we removed everything, and the Marines were the first ones out. And that was the morning of November 4th, 1979, that we Americans were stripped our freedom, our dignity, and our pride, known as the Iran hostage crisis, which lasted for the next 444 days. Like I said, 46 years ago, I'm spending my first full day of being held hostage, and little did I realize it would be 443 more days, 2 Thanksgivings, 2 Christmases. And those memories of growing up kept me alive and praying to the man upstairs. My Catholic religion, my mother especially, she always said, someday you're going to need God, Rocky. So don't ever forget that. And so she was so right. I never prayed so hard in my life. I wanted another chance in life.
And you got it.
I did. Yes, thank goodness. And little did I realize, those first some 30 days, we weren't allowed to speak to anybody other than our interrogators. It wasn't until January of 1980 we were put into a room. I was in a room with Billy Gallegos, the other Marine, and Jerry Plackton, the only American civilian that was taken. And we spent the next 400 days locked up, which, I mean, we went outside probably around 7 times out of 444 days.
Oh my gosh.
It's one of those things that, after seeing recently what happened over in the Middle East, of the hostages returning home and how pale they looked, and that's what we looked like. We were so pale. We weren't underground. We were locked in a room for 400 days. But That second Thanksgiving, that second Christmas, we returned home January 20th, 1981. And that night, when they released us, Cliff, it was one of those things that they come into our room, blindfold us, they put us onto a vehicle, they drive us. And as we made a right-hand turn, you hear a sound of an airplane and your heart is pounding through your chest. Like, is this really going to happen? And you're blindfolded. You're not handcuffed, you're not tied, but you're blindfolded. I didn't have glasses then, didn't have hearing aids then. I was much younger, obviously. And all of a sudden, the vehicle stops and the plane is pushing against the vehicle that we're in. And the guard tells us to unblindfold. And here you start to unblindfold, and you're looking at people that you hadn't seen for 444 days because you were only with these two other people the whole time. And you look bad, you smell bad, and you're like, is this really going to happen? And all of a sudden, they start grabbing one by one and they pull us off the vehicle and they're chanting death to America and spitting on us. And we're boarding the back tail of an airplane. And we have no idea who these people are. Little did we realize they were Algerian. They were our mediator. Well, little did we know that the United States of America, and again, this is where I go back, that first takeover, right? They always said, oh, it was a group of radical students. Well, I'm here to tell you that on January 17th, 1981, the United States government released $8.3 billion to the Islamic Republic of Iran, Cliff. So it wasn't a group of students. They used that as a group of students as the takeover. It was the country, the Islamic Republic of Iran, that took us hostage, and we paid, had no idea that the United States government paid $8.3 billion to release us. The money was released on January 17th. It flew into the country along with this airplane. We were supposed to have been released, but they said, no, we'll release the hostages when we went. So they got the money. Those individuals on this plane that were boarding sat on the runway and slept on this plane for 3 days, waiting for us to be released. Little did we realize that they wanted to do something and do something they did to President Carter. They wanted to stab him one last time because what's happening on January 20th, 1981, the inauguration. We have no idea the time thing of what's going on. You board the airplane, and all of a sudden they start closing the door, and you're looking around saying, hey, where's everybody else? And you start naming off people, and they said, no, no, you're the remaining. The others were let go a year earlier. You had no idea that other people had been let go a year earlier because you could not, nor did you want to leave anybody behind during that. Not only were you held hostage, Cliff, you were also in a country that was fighting a war with their neighbor, Iraq. So you were a hostage in prison with a war going on with Iran and Iraq. And I was 23 years old, grew up very quickly. And so anyway, you're on this airplane. They assured us that no, everybody is here. The pilot comes on, broken English, and he says, we must leave very quickly. So we sit down, and the pilot gets to the end of the runway, stops, turns left, goes up, stops, turns left, goes up, stops. He's got the foot on the brake, and he starts accelerating, plane shaking. All of a sudden, it comes back down to an idle. And little did we realize that they turned the runway lights off because they waited 20 minutes. 20 minutes. And this wasn't by coincidence. This was a planned attack to President Carter. They waited until he was out of office. 20 minutes later, they stabbed him in the back and they turned the runway lights on. So they have done this. And what did they do to President Reagan? 1983, they blew up the American embassy in Beirut, killed 240 Marines. So the Islamic Republic of Iran, 1979, November 4th, I regret, I always tell Billy, and my wife doesn't like it when I say this, I regret not ever pulling that trigger because the war on terror started November 4th, 1979, and they have continued for 46 years. And they told us in our interrogations, it is not you, the American people, we hate, it's your government, but we will use you to humiliate your government. And they know that our government comes and goes every 4 to 8 years, and they just need to stretch it out. Their government has remained radical since 1979 when the Islamic Republic of Iran formed. And so they still are going strong. And so I wish I would have pulled that trigger that morning, November 4th. Although had I probably would not be speaking to you right now, Cliff. But it's just interesting to see what they have done to every president since 1979, and they've gotten away with it. And so it hurts that, the Islamic Republic of Iran has never been held accountable for what they've done, not only to me, but then to come to find out that 8 individuals lost their life on an attempted rescue operation in 1980. These 8 individuals are individuals that I think of every morning when I wake up. I earn each day a memory of them. And that's where Folds of Honor comes in, Cliff. It's Folds of Honor, an organization that provides scholarships to children and spouses of fallen and disabled military and now first responders. And I think of those 8 and my girlfriend, which waited for me. She has now been my wife for 44 wonderful years. We have 3 wonderful children and we have 5 grandkids. Those 8 individuals would never be going fishing with their son as I have with my son. Those 8 individuals would never be going to a father-daughter dance as I have with my daughters. Those 8 individuals would never have a chance to walk their daughter down the aisle as I have. And those 8 individuals would never be able to hold their grandkids as I have. And so that's why each day I earn it in memory of them. And, working for Folds, it's really a therapeutic piece. We have provided since 2007 over 73,000 scholarships. That's $340 million. 91% of every dollar that goes into that scholarship. 43% of our recipients are minority. And out of that 43%, 57% are female. And so it's an incredible organization that Lieutenant Colonel Rooney put together back in 2007, and it's going strong ever since. But it's my therapeutic piece. That's what helps me drive each day because many of my colleagues, a couple of them, when they came home, took their life because of that ordeal. And for me, giving me a drive, giving me a reason and a purpose, it's Folds of Honor.
Well, those numbers are really, really impressive. And Rocky, I can't even imagine going through what you have gone through. But those numbers must be very special to you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, those 8 that I knew very personally because they gave their life for my life. But we as Americans must never forget that freedom is not free. And just like adding not only the military, but now the first responders, there's around 2 million first responders. It's about 800,000 law enforcement, 1,062,000 firefighters, and about 200,000 EMT. And they respond to 240 million 911 calls each year, 240 million. And so when they leave for work in the morning, just like a military man or woman, when they leave, you don't know if they're going to come home. And so, Lieutenant Colonel Rooney wanted to include the first responders back right after 9/11 because, everybody remembers that day that was around and, all those individuals that ran, just like a military situation, military runs into that battle that day of 9/11, all those first responders ran into that situation. And so many of them never came home. And so that's why Folds of Honor, Lieutenant Colonel Rooney wanted to add that. And I think it's so smart, it's so relevant that, again, these are individuals that are there for us each and every day in our hometown.
And I have to assume that's been very well received.
Incredible. Like I said, 73,000 scholarships just last year. They had a 20% increase from 2025 to 2026. It was like 11,000 new scholarships, but 7,700 recipients did not get full funded scholarships. So dollars of what are needed to continue to help those military and first responder families.
So if somebody's listening today and are moved by your story, moved by what the organization is doing, how do they get involved? How do they support Folds of Honor?
They can go to Folds of Honor, FOH.org, and check out the website. And then also at that website, you can check on the chapters throughout the country. We have 38 chapters. Since 2016, we've formed 38 chapters to continue to drive that local community need because every community's got, again, military, And when I say they might not have a military base, but every community's got an American Legion and VFW, and every community's got first responders. And so there's a need for all those, but they can go check out their chapters if they have a chapter. If not, you can become a wingman where you can make a donation of $13. And why 13? 13 folds to a flag. It's very relevant when you receive that flag, that folded flag, the importance behind it. They're given to our service members and our first responders that don't come home. So it's something that your viewers can go out, make a donation, and or get involved in local chapters if they have one.
So you're director of Anheuser-Busch accounts. How did AB get involved in Folds of Honor?
It just so happened right after I came back from Iran, my girlfriend, which is now my wonderful wife, she gave me an ultimatum. She said, either me or the military. But I can't do this. And it wasn't that she didn't like the military, she just didn't want me to travel overseas again. And so I chose wisely. I got out of the service. It was in for about six years. And I went to work for KMOX here in St. Louis because I told her I can't get out until I have a job. And so as I was working at Anheuser-Busch, had an opportunity to work for KMOX, entertain an offer at Anheuser-Busch. I started Anheuser-Busch in 1982. And, that first day they said, Rocky, what is it you would like to do here at Anheuser-Busch? I said, well, I understand you have a department that sells beer to the military. And they said, yeah, we do. I said, I want that job. And so I worked my way up and became director of military sales. So in 2007, I'm director of military sales, and all of a sudden security calls, and I just so happen to be home because you're traveling. And my wife gave me permission to travel all over the world to military bases. But they said, hey, Rocky, security called and said, hey, there's a guy in the foyer of the headquarters, and he's in a flight uniform, and he wants to talk to somebody about a military program. So I said, okay, well, that sounds interesting. I'll be right down. So I go downstairs and I meet Lieutenant Colonel, or excuse me, he was a major at that time, Major Rooney, in his flight uniform. He goes, Mr. Sickmann, I got this program I'd like to talk to you about. And said, well, let me get a conference room. Got a conference room. He told me his story. I told him my story. And that was 2007. 3 years later, Anheuser-Busch then got involved. And now they are one of our long lasting sponsors. 15 years now, $33 million that they have provided. And so I retired in 2016, came on board with Folds of Honor, and been working with the team ever since to continue to grow that number.
So what's your role today at Folds of Honor?
Yeah, so when I retired, I became senior director, but last year I kind of wanted to slow down after 43 years and wanted to start enjoying my life with my wife and my grandkids. I became from senior to director. Bob Fishbeck is now my boss. He's the senior director. I'm just a director and helping him to continue to work with the Anheuser-Busch wholesalers and all of our Folds of Honor employees to grow that business.
So what's the priorities for the next 12 months? You've got this transition going on, but I assume there's much, much more.
Oh my gosh, the people that work at Folds of Honor, we have military, we have spouses of military, the spouses of first responders, we have first responders, but everybody, those 38 chapters, we had a development call the other day, and everybody's so busy, hosting galas and golf events and special events just to raise dollars. So those things are going to continue because, like I said, we have to narrow that gap of those 7,700 unfunded full scholarships. We got to close that gap. And so, your viewers, if anybody wants to make that donation and get involved, it's really coming together to raise those funds to close the gap.
Well, you've got a very exciting role, and it probably doesn't even seem like a job, I'm guessing, at this point, because I know the passion that you have for it. What's a typical day look like for you? You still traveling some?
It really depends. Now, with everything happening, obviously, the call with you here today, I have a veterans lunch tomorrow, and then I start speaking on Friday because of Veterans Day. Do a lot of speaking. So I speak Friday, I speak Monday, I speak Tuesday, and next Thursday. And so a lot of different events of hearing the story of Folds of Honor, but it's interesting how my story also folds into Folds of Honor. But I wake up in the morning. I used to, when I was locked in a room for 400 days, Cliff, Billy and I and Jerry, I was doing 600 sit-ups. I'm not doing 600 sit-ups now, but I was doing 600 sit-ups at that time. But I get up in the morning, try to do my exercises, maybe 30 sit-ups, some push-ups. I like to hit the sauna my wife and I have and start doing emails and start talking to people about Folds of Honor. But every day is a different day. It's not the same thing. But like I said, working with the employees of Folds of Honor, you can't meet a better group of people that do so many wonderful things for our country in helping to raise funds for Folds.
Well, and you're a great ambassador, and we appreciate you being on Outdrive today and tell us about your personal experiences, but also about this organization that I think more and more people are going to be hearing about in the years to come. As we wrap up today, you've had so many messages to us that are inspiring. But is there any one thing that you can leave us with today that you'd like to share that might inspire our listeners?
At Folds of Honor, we say honor their sacrifice, educate their legacy. And as I mentioned earlier, that freedom is not free. And we live in the best country in the world. I mean, people are dying to get to our country, and we need to enjoy it and respect it. And like I said, when I was younger, my parents taught me that love of family, love of faith, and love of country. And it's one of those things that we need to teach our younger individuals the respect of what that American flag represents. Because I can tell you, yesterday, 46 years ago, that American flag was burnt at our American embassy. And I never thought I'd ever see what that flag represented, and that was freedom. I mean, freedom is everything. And when it's been stripped from you, man, you want it back so much. It's really hard to describe, Cliff, but if Billy was here, he would understand because I mean, we lived it for 444 days. We had no idea if we were going to live or die, morning, noon, and night. And like I said, it wasn't also the hostages, but it was all those individuals that were on that rescue operation. It was also the families, my poor parents. You have children, Cliff?
I do. I have three.
Can you imagine? How could you be doing your job today if you knew that your son or daughter was held hostage? That's what my parents did for 444 days, and the media lived in their yard. And they were very simple people. My father was a concrete mixer driver. My mother worked in the carpet store as a secretary, but they were thrown into the situation. And when I came home, you could see how it changed them, those 444 days. And so I don't wish that on anybody. But again, like I said, every morning I wake up, I thank the man upstairs for giving me a second chance. And I remember and I earn each day in memory of those 8 that gave their life for me because I would want them to be happy that I'm living, the most of my life and giving back. And so that's where I'm at.
Amen, brother.
Amen.
Rocky, again, thank you for your service. Thank you for being with us today. I know how busy you are, and I appreciate you working us in and wish you all the best as you go forward.
Thank you so much, Cliff. I truly appreciate it. And I want to wish all the veterans that are out there a happy Veterans Day. And of course, the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th. Happy 250th birthday.
Well said. Hey, folks, thanks for listening to Outdrive. I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Rocky Sickmann, Director of Anheuser-Busch Accounts for Folds of Honor. Come back again next week, and I'll take you down the roads of rural America where it's heaven on earth.
Thanks for taking a ride with us on Outdrive. This episode is complete, so head on over to ecallis.com for more insight you can apply to help drive your business growth. And be sure to sign up for our free monthly e-letter, Outthink, for even more helpful content about marketing to rural America. Have a great day and keep on driving.